let me start today. Questions? No? Cool. Okay, so we're going to start today with CSS, right? And pretty sure for the people that finished that postcard, you had somehow to use CSS to be able to make it look like that, right? So CSS are the initial of Cascade style sheets. Okay? So basically, when HTML was invented, HTML pages, again, were really black and white, no styles, no layouts, when I say layout, it's basically no fancy organization of the content in the page. It was just straight up paragraph of information, some tables, and links between pages, right? That was HTML in a nutshell when it started. Now, a little bit of color was necessary, but not just color, also a way to modify the whole appearance of the web page. At that point, CSS was created. Now, I'm not sure that I talked about this before, but who created CSS and who created HTML? Well, there is a body, a governing body, the W3, I think it's an organization that basically maintains the standard, right? This is a standard. Most browsers have to implement it according to a standard, so you can open a web page on Firefox or Chrome or Internet Explorer, and they will all look the same, right? That's why we have standards. Now, CSS was created to basically style the web pages, right? To give them font sizes, font colors, to have text, to be able to get the text organized somehow with paddings, with margins, and then we can add a lot of set of new directives to control how things will look on the page, how things will appear on the page, and even make some animations on the web page, right? Now, for that, we use CSS, as I said before, and what we're going to learn today in this initial part of the class is how to use it, right, in our web pages. So far, we have HTML, and we already know. By the way, I would always talk about syntax and semantics. Okay? The thing is, programming languages are not that different from speaking languages like English or Spanish or any other language, right? They have syntax. So when in English you speak about syntax, you're talking about how words are written, the way the paragraph or sentences are connected, right? That's what syntax is. And then you have semantics. What are the meaning of the words? What are the meanings of the sentences? And what are the meaning of the paragraphs? And actually, the person that created the theory behind speaking languages is the same person that computer scientists study to create languages. And that person, you probably know him for a different reason, Noam Chomsky. No, never heard of this guy? Noam Chomsky? Right. It's more about politics, maybe?
Yeah, it's also about
It's, yeah, but he's a linguist, and he created basically the theory behind how you analyze programming languages. Languages. And that same theory is applied to programming languages. So I will be talking about syntax and semantics. Now, syntax is the way we write the code. And semantics is the meaning of the code. Okay? Let me give you an example with HTML. In HTML, we have, if I want to put a paragraph, what is the syntax to create a paragraph? A tag P, and then the text of the paragraph, right? The text of with the ending tag. So this is the syntax. Starting tag, content of the paragraph, ending tag, right? If I don't put any of the elements of that syntax, for example, the ending tag, browsers will still do something with that, but that's not technically correct, right? We need to be, we need to have the whole syntax, okay? So that's the syntax. Now the semantic of this is a paragraph, right? The user will see it as a paragraph. Same thing with a link. We have an A tag, we have the href with the URL that we want to link to. And if I don't put anything inside that, like for example, is this correct? Is it? What do you think? It's not correct. Why? What is missing? Of course, you saw me removing it, but the quotes, exactly. It's part of the syntax. So when you are putting attributes, you have to do attribute name equals quotes, the value of the attribute. Okay? That's the syntax on how to write HTML. If I'm talking about a self-closing tag, you know the syntax is the tag, let's say a horizontal ruler, slash, and closing the tag. So this is a self-closing tag. That's the syntax of a self-closing tag. Okay? So this is important. Why? Because later on in the program, probably a month from now, we will be creating something that we call React components. Right? And React components are similar to tags, except that they have different names. For example, mortgage calculator. Right? And you see the syntax is similar. It's a tag. Right? So when I tell you this React library uses the same syntax as a tag, an HTML tag, you already know what's the syntax of an HTML tag. This opening tag, name of the tag, attributes, closing tag is self-close, or maybe you have something like app, and then you have something, and then you say slash app, right? Same thing. So the syntax is important here. Now, we know the syntax of HTML. We learned that yesterday. What is the syntax and the meaning of the semantics of CSS? Now, the syntax of CSS is something like this. We have to put a selector. We put a curly bracket or curly braces. Not sure what's the best, the name you prefer for this. I call it curly brackets or curly braces, whatever. And then inside this curly brackets, for every line, in every line, you will put a different CSS property, right? So CSS property. Let's put an example. Let's make an example. So let's say I want to change the body. So I want to change my web page and make the body blue, right? The background will be blue and the text will be white, right? It will be similar to very old computers. So I can have a black and green. You're right. That's right. Let's do that. Let's do that. Okay, background color black, right? And then we can say another property, text green. And we can even add one more to give the whole experience.
Courier 10.
Let's do monospace. So now that's the syntax, right? And let me explain the syntax. First line, you have the selector, and we will discuss what a selector is. So you have a selector, and then you have curly brackets, okay? Inside those curly brackets, you have to put the properties. The properties are the CSS elements that you can change to style your page, right? And it's probably hundreds of these, right? I only know the few that probably 20 that I use in my day-to-day. but there is a ton of them that you can use, and even variations on shortcuts of other CSS properties. So these three, for example, for every property you have the property name, so CSS property name, colon, and the value, and ends with a semicolon, right? The names of the CSS properties are documented in the document, the CSS documentation. You can find it in MDN, the Mozilla Developer Network. So just Google MDN CSS. You will see them all there. There is a ton of them, and you will see them. And then the values depend on what property do you want to change, right? Now, the values usually go around sizes, colors. Sometimes you have, for example, the font family is like a string. You have certain values that you can apply, right? So it depends on the property. And you can apply as many properties as you want to style anything on the page, right? Now you can add more than one section of this, right? You can have multiple. Another selector. I will just name it so it's not the same, so you understand that it's not the same. And then another. And then another, and another, and another, and another, and another. Okay? Back in the day, these CSS files will be very huge, right? Because usually we didn't have the, I would say, the technology or just the abstraction, the right abstractions to simplify how can we create this, how can we style the pages. So basically you will style everything. You have, oh, this is this element, this button, and I will add all this style for that button. And then this other thing, I will add all the styles to that thing, right? Right now it's a little bit different, and we will learn that. But this is the way we style pages in CSS. Now, what is a selector? Let's go through CSS selector. Now, CSS selector, the word says selector, allows you to identify anything on the web page that you want to change the style, right? The most common selector is just the tag. When I did this here, I said body. This is the body tag. That means that everything that is inside that body tag will have background color black, text green, and font family monospace. By the way, monospace is just the text that everything is the same size. So it looks like an old, like a computer from, a movie or something. It's just a movie. You get the idea. Okay, so what is the selector? So let's see how can we create a selector. Now, selector is just a word that we use to describe that. Identifying the element that we want to style. Okay? The way the selectors work is we can style a tag. So any tag you can use to identify as a selector, right? We can style the body and anything inside. Remember, everything that is inside the body is visible. Don't try to style the title because that won't work, right? That's impossible. But you can style anything inside the body. So any tag that can go inside the body of the web page in HTML, that's a tag that you can use. Let's say I do this, div, and I say text red. That means that all divs in this page will have the text red. Okay? Because it's basically selecting the tag. It could be one or it could be many, right? I'm selecting the divs tags. If I do P, I'm selecting all the paragraph. So all the paragraph will have text red. Okay? So that's the way to select a tag. Of course, now you can see the problem with this is that you are overreaching probably, right? Because you don't want to style, unless you definitely want to style everything with the same text red, right? And by the way, there is an asterisk that means everything. So every tag could be selected. Don't go there because it's kind of messy. But yeah, we have the div. Now we can also style based on some attributes that HTML pages have. Remember the ID attribute? I think we have a question about this the other day. So we can create a tag and give it a certain ID. Let's say this is my section. Let's call it title. Right? I have this HTML, and if I want to style only that div, right? I can have 100 more divs in the page, but I only want to style that div. What do? I say, well, I only want to style the ID type. And you see that pound sign or dash means ID. So the ID title, and I can style it with text red. Okay? So that's what the dash means. Style the or select the element that has the ID title. Now, one thing in the semantic is that the full semantic is something like this: tag dash ID dot class, and then pseudo. It's the whole thing, right? That means that I can put any part of this section or this selector, right? I can put the tag and the ID. So if I want the div that has the ID title, it should be something like this: div dash title. Now we know ID is unique, so we don't need to say div title, because if we come here and we say, okay, now you are span, what will happen? Nothing, right? Because this selector is trying to style something that don't even exist in the page, right? There is no div with ID title. There is a span with ID title. But that's not the same, right? So it will not apply to that. It will not apply to this element. Make sense? Questions before I move on to the next part of the selector? Great. So next is class, right? Now, what's the issue with IDs? And to be honest, IDs is not something that we use very often now. Probably some 5 years ago, but today, the problem with ID is that it's unique, right? So what happens when you have multiple elements in the page that are basically the same or look the same, right? And you've probably seen them before. You've probably seen them in a lot of pages. You have a button that says send or something like that, right? Or, well, send, no, it's like, I don't know, action, anything. And the button has certain background and certain text color. I know I cannot apply text color here, but you get the point. Or maybe round edges, right? You've probably seen this in a lot of pages, right? So we have a button that has a lot of things. So if I go button by button and trying to apply the same styles, that would be writing too much code. And to that point, we create something called class. So we can create a button here saying, okay, this is the button, and we will say this is a class btn, right? So I have a button here, and let's say this button says edit, and this button says delete. So I have one button that says action, one button that says edit, right? And one button that says delete. all of these three buttons can have the same class. So I can say, okay, style the class button, right? And I will apply the CSS properties necessary to make it look round the borders, background green, text black. Maybe change the size, change the padding, etc., etc. So all the elements in the page that have the same class will look the same, right? That's the idea behind class. But that means that if I have a div, let's say I have an H1 that says transactions, and I do class same as the buttons, how will this transactions H1 will look like? What do you think it will happen? So regular H1 will be something like this. Transactions, perhaps a little bit bigger, right? I cannot make this text bigger, but you get the idea. If I apply the class BTN, what will happen? Sorry? It will apply exactly the same style. So it will take it and it will put a background green, and it will make it with the borders and the padding and the text and everything. Now, if I didn't change the text size in my button class or my button styles, then this button will have the text size of H1, but it will have the rest of the properties or visual properties as a button, right? So what I'm saying is that CSS doesn't know to what element depends on. If I want to limit, I should say, okay, I only want to apply these two buttons, right? So then my styles will only apply to button elements that have the class button, BTN, right? You see? So now if I apply, by mistake probably, the BTN class to this H1, it will not show as green. It will still show as an H1, because the classes, the styles will not apply to this H1. It will only apply to a button with the class BTN. Make sense? Questions? Now, this is the part that I made you Google a little bit. I want to start this button. What will be the CSS properties? Google it. Which one?
Properties for the button.
Yeah. I want to look exactly like that. What properties would you apply to this class, to this button?
You want to make it look like what?
To this, like this delete button over here.
Oh, border radius.
Okay, border radius.
Yeah, and then you have to, I guess I don't know if you need the width and the height though.
Let's
Put
just.
put a radius. I don't know, 20 pixels. I don't know what it would look like. Whatever.
Okay, let's put 6 pixels.
6, yeah.
Okay. What else? Now we have the rounded borders.
You need
By the way, at this point,
background color.
we have a button that looks. Sorry, let me draw a button here. It will not look like this. It will be more like this, but with rounded borders, right? Something like this. And probably gray, because browsers by default have a gray. They don't have a gray background here, so. Okay, so what else?
Background color.
Background color. What color?
Green.
Green? Got it. Now, what if I want that exact shade of green? Just to me.
RGBA.
You can look it up by the code color and then it'll be the same color.
Exactly. I can somehow figure out what color is this
There's some
with
tools that will let you like pitch
pick.
the color
Yeah,
up,
pitch the color exactly.
give you the color.
So there is a format for color. It's a dash, and then you have RGB, and sometimes the A. So RGB will be something like 00 FF 00. And if you want some shade or make it a little bit transparent, then you have an extra channel here. I would leave it like that. So that's also green, the same green. By the way, there is a ton of ways to select colors. You can also do like this, right? That will be the same green.
Would it throw colors if you put RGBA for transparency?
It will be something like this, F at the end. So you can check the documentation. It's RGBA, red, green, blue, alpha, and each one of those can have one value or two values. From 00 to FF. FF means the highest value in hexadecimal. Yes?
White and black.
Sorry, what?
No, white and black.
Yeah, white and black, exactly. Those two are white and black. Actually, not quite. This one is transparent
No color.
because it's full transparency. Cool. Well, what else? What is my button? Okay, what else? Let's make it simple for now. Just put green here. What else? What other properties can I apply to this button?
With height?
Adding.
I don't know.
Padding. What is padding?
Space between top, bottom, left,
Around
right.
the content. Space
Between
around-
what? It's important to know the distinction in that space.
Space around the content inside the container.
Exactly. So we have three properties there that you need to understand. One is the, well, let me remove this. One is the content, right? So you have, if your content uses this area, padding is the space from the edges of the component to the content, right? You can make it bigger or zero. Basically, the element doesn't have any space between the content and the border, right? And then you have the border. So this section here, I assume this is the border. And on top of that, you have the margin. So margin is the space between the border and the next component, okay? And you can have, it could be zero for any of these three values. So you could be margin, border, and padding, okay? If these three are zero, that means that you have all the elements attached to each other. Now, the one thing about the padding that is important is that when you put a background color or a background image, the padding will take that background color and background image, right? Not the margin. The margin is the space between the element and the rest, but the padding will take the background color. So if I put, that's why if I put here padding, I don't know, 6 pixels, that means that I'm applying a padding of 6 pixels to every side of the element, right? And if I do 610, that will be 6 pixels top and bottom, 10 pixels left and right, right? You can find that in the documentation. It's just that I use it pretty much every day and I already know what they mean. Cool. What else?
Text align.
Text online. Yeah, why not?
Center.
Center. Good. What else?
If you don't wanna see the border none.
Exactly. So this is an interesting. The same way I can do padding and set one value, and it will apply to all the edges, or set a value, two values, and then applies to the axis. With border like this, there is some CSS properties that have the same behavior. You can apply multiple properties in the same line, right? For example, solid, 1px, black. That means that it will be a solid border with the width of 1 pixel, and then it will be black. Now, there is three properties for that. Border style, solid. Border weight, 1 pixel. And then border color, black. Right? These three is the same as this. Okay?
Does it matter what order you put them in?
Not sure. I have to be honest. I always use it this order. Maybe just put it in different order. It will detect that solid is basically the style and use it. I don't think so, by the way. But try it and let me know what happened. So the thing is that what I want you to understand is that some CSS property have shortcuts or shorthands. Not sure the shorthands, right? It's basically a single CSS property where you can apply a bunch of other properties. And some CSS property, in this case also like border, you can also apply or have versions of that to particular parts of the element. For example, you can say border top style, right? And say, okay, the border, or let's say border top color, and then say white. So now the top border will be white and the rest of the border will be black, right? That's another thing. And of course, now you can see why we have probably 200, 300 CSS properties, because you have versions of the same property that cannot be applied to different parts of the element, right? Of course, we don't need this. We can use just the border. What else? I mean, there is another thing that we can add here.
Font size?
Exactly. Font size. 20 pixels. Font family. Sans serif. That means no decoration. Like this text. Sorry. So it's a font without decorations. A font with decoration will be something like this. Oh, no. We don't have. This is a mono space. This is sans serif, and this is something else. Cool. What else? Just trying to get a great button here, like an amazing button here. What? Why I'm trying to be very precise in terms of the styling is because browsers by default have their own styles. If you don't specify it, it will use the browser's default, right? And that means that you go with a super nice design, right? And you say, okay, I will make it look like this, and you apply only the styles that you need because your browser doesn't have any weird settings. And then some of your users have some particular setting to change the font size or the font colors because they just like pink letters, and now your button is pink, right? And you don't know why. So what I'm saying is that if you want to implement the exact design that you have, just put all the CSS properties that you need to implement that design. Okay, don't leave anything but to change, because the browser can have different settings, and then your design will look basically different. Okay, so yeah, I think that's pretty much it's good. Questions about applying styles? Yes.
I'm sure I went over this in the document, but I just have a question. The border radius is basically what I would say curls the size of the border.
Yes. Depends on check the documentation, but I think there is a way. For example, you seen these buttons where the borders are like rounded, like fully rounded. So if you say 6 pixels, that will be the size of the size that is rounded, right? So if your button is 20 pixels high, it will be 6 pixels from the top and the bottom rounded. Now, if you put a 50%, right? That means that 50% of the height will be rounded. That means that you're making a circle on the edges, right? And if you have a perfect square element, like let's say you have a div that is it's a square, right? And you put border radius of 50%, that means that it's a circle, right? So what I'm saying, but it's a circle no matter the size of the no matter the size of the square, because it's always 50%, and so whatever size you put, it will be still a circle. The thing is that if you put 50 pixels, then it will be a circle up to 100 pixels, the square. After 200 pixels, then it will be like a big square, a little bit rounded in the edges, right? So there's a difference between pixels and percentages. That's what I'm trying to say. Cool. Hopefully that answers your question. Any other question? Any other questions? Questions? No questions? Cool. Now, the way CSS properties, the other thing that we need to learn about CSS properties. So, okay, first we had the CSS selector. So we have tag, dash, so next ID, and then we have class. Okay? Now, one extra thing here is that you can have more than one class applied to the same element, right? And you can have, so because you can have more than, let me see what is my, because you can have more than one class apply to the element. Let's say I'm creating this delete button. It's not that clear that it's a dangerous operation, right? I want to make it red instead of green, just to signal the user that this is dangerous. So I will put a danger class here. I will create a class called danger, and then I will create the styles to make that danger class, instead of showing a green button, show a red button. So I can do button danger background color red. Now I don't need to put all the styles, right, for a button, because my button already has the btn class, and that class have all the properties of the button. The only property that I want to override is the color. So I put btn danger. Now the order that you put the classes matter. Also the order that where you put the code matters, right? So too many things matter here. That's what I'm trying to say. Even the way you name, like I can name this in a different way, the danger. So anything that is danger will be red, right? And to that type of hierarchy, that's what we call let me see if I can specificity. Hopefully it's correct. Specificity. And it's basically the way classes have preference over the selectors have preference over all the selectors, right? Usually the way they work, and you can see it in the documentation, is inline styles are applied, have more preference, and then I think there are IDs, and then we have classes, and then we have the tag, right? So tags are the less preferred, classes are next, IDs are in that order, right? That means that if I have a tag with a class, let's say button, or let's use danger. Remember our danger class? Don't click this. So if remember our class, our danger class, what color this button will show? Red, right? Now, it will show red because there's no other classes or style applied. But if I go to this button and I say right there in the button, style, background color, blue, right? The specificity of the inline style tells me that inline styles have more preference than classes and IDs and tags. So this means that this button will show up blue because it has an inline style. So those have the higher priority. And then it will go to ID. So if I have a tag, so if this button has an ID of danger button, and I style the dash danger button with a different color, right? Then this style will have preference over classes as well, right? Because it's an ID. I'm styling the ID. You see where I'm going? Now, this is kind of like a mess. It's really hard to get right. That's why we tend to prefer only one way to do it, so we know that we are playing an even field, and we don't have to worry about, oh, this is an inline style, this is an ID, this is a, no. Which one do you think we prefer? Exactly, class. It's the most versatile, right? Anything can be a class, right? And you can put the same class in multiple divs or put multiple elements. Not the same with IDs. Remember, ID, only one element can have the same ID. You can apply the class to any tag, so more versatile. And the other thing, you don't like inline styles at all. Like, try to avoid that at any cost, right? So we prefer classes. This is the winner here. So everything we do in CSS, we use classes for that. And when you get to that point of classes, now the question is, well, the CSS selector that you're creating, right? And the order in your CSS file where these classes are created. So you have a danger button here. Let's take this to the class field. So we have class. We say that we are no longer applying, right? So we have BTN and danger. In this case, because danger is after, let's say, BTN, because danger is applied after BTN, then all the style from danger will be applied later. And the later style is the one that gets applied, right? So if BTN has a background color, like the green background color that we have, then this button will be red. Got it? Yes?
Okay, so you said danger is last. How does the BTN get,
What?
how is it chosen first?
I just put it there.
Yes, I understand that, but
I just wrote it. I mean, I could put danger and then BTN, right? But that would be, well, that would not give me the expected result. I want to make this button red, not green. Right, so I put BTN, like I put the most generic thing first. Right, button, this is a button. And then I start making some changes to the button style, and that's danger. And danger will make it red, right? By the way, there is a lot of websites and documentation and methodologies online just dedicated on how to do two things. Organize your CSS, and the other thing is name your CSS classes, right? Right now I have BTN and danger. And by the way, that BTN, I just took it from Bootstrap, and you will learn Bootstrap probably in a couple classes. Bootstrap has a class called BTN, and that's a button. If you apply BTN as alone, you have a white button. And then you start applying different other classes. BTN Success, oh, that's the green button. BTN Danger, that's the red button, right? But BTN Success, when you go to see what that class has, it's only the color of the background, or maybe the text, because the text should be white, right, to make it look good. So yeah, that's where we are in terms of applying classes. But again, we try to use classes. It's not that you cannot use the other ones. It's just that when you get to a company, you will see many things that are a certain way, just because when you get to an industry, to get to a company, to be able to produce code faster and with quality, you have to limit yourself to certain things, right? So classes alone, because if we go with IDs and tags and inline classes, that will be too much complexity, and we don't want complexity. We want to make things simple so we can produce faster, right? And that's the same, even JavaScript. Once we get to JavaScript, and you can go, there is a very famous meme about JavaScript books. You see this image? The one on the left is the full reference, right? The full language. The one on the right is the good parts, right? We only use that part, the good parts. We don't use anything else, because we don't want to get too complex. We want to make things simple so we can produce faster, right? The same with CSS, the same with HTML. Like in HTML, there's a lot of tags that we can use. We don't go there. We just use divs. It's the most versatile, right? You can use it. You should be able to create anything with a div. Cool. Questions before we move on to the project? No? So right now we have to apply this knowledge to a project. Now, one last thing before we move on to the project is how can we connect an HTML page and the CSS styles that we are creating, right? There's two ways, and one of the ways is by creating a style tag in our HTML. This style tag should go in the head, right? So in the head of our web page, remember all web pages have two sections, main sections. One is the head, one is the body. So you can put the style tags in the head, okay? And inside that tag, anything that you put is CSS, okay? So right here I can start writing CSS. Okay, that's one way. And of course, this has the problem that if your CSS and your web page start getting bigger, your CSS also starts getting bigger, and then you have all CSS and JavaScript and HTML in the same page, so your page is double the size, right? The way we prefer to do it is by creating a file. So let's say this is your index HTML, and you have a styles CSS. Index HTML is pretty much default, like try to keep that name always. Style CSS is not. So whatever you decide to use there, you can call it styles, you can call it globals. I've seen this a lot. You can call estilos if that's your thing. I don't recommend it. If you speak Spanish, don't code in Spanish. That's not a good idea. Not for nothing. It's just that English is the programming language preferred by pretty much 100% of the world. So it's kind of hard when you go to a team and nobody can understand your code. English is preferred. So yeah, name it just style CSS, and then you can link it. So there is a tag called link, and I think the syntax is href style CSS, And you have to put an extra attribute called style sheets. If you used this before, correct me if I'm wrong, because I never used this. I think this is the way we link it. Sorry?
Well, it's rel, not REL, not HREL.
Where we have rel, style sheet, and then we have href. That's correct?
It's right, it's just backwards.
Oh, it's fine. The order of the attributes doesn't matter. You can have them in any order. Cool. So that's the way you link it, and it should be applied the styles. So it will take the style from the other file into this page. Now, what is this the preferred way? The second reason for that is that when you're using a tool like the tool that we use, CodeSpaces, Visual Studio Code, any other tool, those tools are really good at editing CSS. So when you start writing the CSS properties, it will give you the autocomplete, and you will see, oh, this is the version. It will help you select colors. It will have a lot of tools to improve that experience in terms of coding, right? Cool. Questions. No questions? Great. Cool. So for the people that finish the project, I will ask you to code it again, but using Flexbox CSS properties. And if you already did it with Flexbox CSS property, well, I don't have anything else to teach you in terms of CSS, because that's pretty much it in terms of CSS. But if not, then use Flexbox. Okay? And if it's not, then let's build it. Questions? Yes?
Are we still submitting the project?
That project? No. Oh, wait, I don't know. Renee, do we submit the project, the postcard?
Yeah, we just submit
Oh,
it. In the bottom, just copy the.
Okay, so we need to do some things before we go into the project. Thank you. What's the question?
If, I can add more, you can add more sheets, right?
Yeah, you can add more than one, yeah.
So what happens when you do that?
Same thing when the specificity still applies.
The first one is always
Yeah.
or the last one?
Good question.
So what I'm saying is, if I add another one, it will override the one that's there.
I honestly don't know. It depends on what the spec says. Because the thing is that when a page, let's say you have a web page, right? And that page has 2 links to different CSS. Now, this page might have some content inside. And that means that the browser, when it renders the page, it will see that link, and it will go to download that CSS, right? And it will basically go to download 2 CSS. But what CSS gets applied? The one that gets first, and then the second one in that order, or it's just the order that that appears in the text, in the code. I honestly don't know. That would be, but how do you test it?
No, because maybe, in the future you have a big website and then you want to add extra stuff that maybe it's not on the first one. I don't know. I'm just saying, for whatever reason, you don't want to go back to that one and mess with it. You just
Oh,
wanna
I
add
see.
other things to a new one and add it.
Yes, and actually that's the way. I think that the way it works is the one that appears second, because I remember back in the day, the way to customize, for example, Bootstrap was to import Bootstrap first and then import your own styles, right? And your styles will always be applied if you know how to create them with the right specificity, so it overrides the Bootstrap style, right? Like overriding colors and that type of thing. Now, in reality, we will get to learn HTML and CSS because it's the foundation, right? In reality, we don't use this directly. We don't link directly. That's why I don't know the tag exactly how the tag is used, because these are the basis, but then over that you put a layer of abstraction, for example, Bootstrap, and then you add another layer of abstraction, JavaScript, and then you add another layer of abstraction, React, and then you add another layer of abstraction, that's the framework that provides the whole thing, and then you don't even see the HTML anymore or the CSS, right? It's just working at a level where you are thinking about elements or components in the page. You're not thinking about divs and styling and colors and that type of thing, right? But we need to know how that all that works. Hopefully that answers your question. Okay, questions? More questions? Any more questions? 7-3. Yes.
When's the deadline for the project?
Tomorrow? Oh, no, Monday.
Monday?
Yes. So we have projects every class, pretty much, right? Some class we don't have projects because it's just practice. The idea is that you can finish before the next class. So if the next class has a project, you don't have, something. So yeah, we should be able to finish today.
And since we're on that subject, what do we need to pass this class and actually get like a certificate? Do we need to have like a percentage
Oh.
of like being here or just the projects or what do we need?
I don't know. I'm looking at you because you already went through that. Okay, so the thing is we have a final project, right? And you should be able to build something that's usable and has all the requirements of a final project. That is, if it's built with the technology that we teach you, it has a backend, it has users, it has an API, you can interact, like generate content. So it has certain requirements, right? Finishing the projects is necessary, and because I think someone in the academy tracks that, and they will let you know that you are falling behind in the projects. If you ask me, I honestly never care much about the projects, only because you learn you creating them. So it's basically trusting the process, the thing that they had in the beginning. So trust the process. It's like when you build the projects, that the projects are created in a certain way and they have certain requirements that will give you the base for the next project, right? So if you don't finish the project, then the next, it will be harder to implement. I think from that point of view, the point is like, okay, I need to finish the project, right? If you finish it or not, or you finish it like, some projects like you can know how to finish it but don't have the time, don't worry, don't do it, right? But if you know how to finish it, because then in the next project you will need that knowledge. You see where I'm going? Sometimes coding takes time, of course. You already know how to do it, like in your mind, like honestly, you know how to do it, then from my point of view, it's not important to finish it, as long as you can do it again, right, in the next project, because that's what you need for the next project. Make sense? Cool.
And as for assistance, do we need to like be in every class? Let's say like if you can't come for a week because you have work or whatever. Because we have.
Yeah.
Like, you need to like miss one day. Is that okay, or do we have percentages that we need to do?
Someone asked the same question last program, and the answer was try to not miss two or more classes in a row, because the thing is that you fall really fast behind if you do that, right? Like for example, if you miss JavaScript, the first JavaScript class, and then you miss the second one, when you get to the third, you are really far behind, right? And if you miss 3 on the row, that's kind of like, unless you keep it up in your own time and you do the practice and you try to read the lessons and ask questions once you get to class, you see, but it's a bigger effort. That's what I'm trying to say, right? I guess someone in the academy will get in touch with you if you miss a couple classes, but I don't think it's that big of a deal. But you have to put more work on yourself, on your own time, right? Yeah. Questions?
Are we going to receive HTML and CSS first and then JavaScript, or the three at the same time?
Wait, what?
Sorry.
Sorry, what's the question again?
We are going to receive first HTML.
This is the last classes for CSS. After this, I will move on to the next subject.
But I mean, we are going to finish first HTML and CSS.
Finish,
and
what do you call finish?
learn the basic things, you know.
Today we're going to learn CSS. We're going to do a project, and then next class we do layouts. Layouts is basically Flexbox. That's why I'm trying to get to Flexbox already. But the other class is Bootstrap,
Oh, yeah.
and then the other class is JavaScript, and then the other class is React, and then the other class is all the elements of React. And we are not going back to learn about CSS. Like, I would assume that you already know enough to.
So, yeah, I mean, we finish with that, and then we move to another.
We move to the next topic, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we're not going to spend more than 2 classes or 3 classes into CSS. In JavaScript, yeah, because JavaScript we cannot cover in a single class, right? We'll have like 3 or 4 classes for JavaScript, and then the rest of the program is just JavaScript because React is JavaScript. So we keep working with JavaScript, but I will not. I mean, once you get to that point, and I tell you put a tag, I will not explain what a tag is again, right? You already know what's the syntax of a tag and what is a tag, and same for CSS. Make sense? Cool. Question?
I'm still a little fuzzy with where I'm applying the repo, because I'm not understanding if I did the project already and okay, what is her name? Alyssa?
Ernesto, yeah.
She stated that the pre-work was a different, I guess, URL or whatever.
Yeah, don't worry about the pre-work.
This URL is completely different, I guess, because they charge us. So what I'm trying to understand is the previous. Do I turn in the previous URL to the project?
No.
But
You-
that's the only link. It's the same link.
Yeah, but you will build a new one, right?
Yeah, but it's still the same link.
Yeah.
So
It's
that's
def-
what I'm saying.
Yeah, no, it's definitely the same link. So what we're going to do right now is that project, right? The build a digital postcard, this one,
Right.
correct? Now, this is the first time we're going to work on a project, so I will go through the steps of creating a project. You probably already went to those steps in the pre-work, but we will do it again, right? So this is the repo that we're going to use for that project. You see the repo over there? And you can see that this is a GitHub. This is the GitHub repo, right? So github.com. Let me copy it so we can see it all. Right here. Right, github.com. Breedcode. Not sure this organization. I guess this is the old name of the Forgates organization, and the file and the project is exercise postcard, right? Now, when you open that in your browser, you get to the repo, right? You can all see that. Got it? Cool. Okay, so in this particular repo, because you have to submit it once you finish, you cannot go here and hit code, and I did, but okay, I don't need to submit it. You cannot hit create a code space directly into this repo, right? The reason for that is that when you open that code space, you are changing code. And when you try to submit that code, meaning saving that code to GitHub, back to GitHub, you cannot, because this is not your repo. You don't have permission to write in this repo, right? So you don't want to use this repo. You want to fork it or copy it, right? Fork it is a lingo for basically creating a clone of that repo, right? Well, that's what we're going to do. We're going to fork. You see the fork button at the top? Right, and then you click it. You can click there, and I would choose the owner for Geeks Academy. And when you create repos, your own repos, forking or creating a template or using a template, etc., we will see what templates are in later classes. And you select for Geeks Academy. For Geeks Academy will be the owner of that repo. And that's because Forgates pays for code spaces. So instead of 40 hours a month, you will have unlimited hours a month, right? 4 gigs is paying for those hours. Now, the problem with that is that there is a ton of repos there, right? So how do you find your own? My advice is put your initials. You can put like this, like that. Well, it will actually be, so I put my initials, dash, and the name of the repo that I want to create. So when I'm looking for the repo inside 4 gigs, I can always put my initials and I will find all my repos, right? Because otherwise it will be crazy. So you can create it like this and then create a fork. This will basically clone or copy that repo into another repo. But in this repo, I will have permission, right? It will be in 4 gigs Academy, but I am the owner. And then when I open the code space, I can save the content, and then I can submit it. What is the URL I submit? That URL on the top, you see? Because that's the URL of the repo. Questions? Now, the only problem I see with this is that the repo doesn't stay in your GitHub account, right? And that's a problem because you want your GitHub account to have more stuff. So I would suggest that for some projects, and I will tell you which ones, and you probably will identify which one, you want to, instead of creating in 4 gigs, you want to create it in your own account. So they stay in your account, right? So when someone opens your GitHub account, they will see a bunch of repos with actual code that actually works. Make sense? Cool.
Yeah, but you could go back in there into 4 gigs and fork that again,
Yes.
whatever you want. Let's just say the same one that you submitted, you could go back and fork it, draw it to yourself again, right? And you put yourself as the owner.
Oh, I already have one. That's the problem with forking. You can always fork once.
Well,
The other thing that we use is templates. I think for this one, makes sense that you only fork it once. I think fork is like a remnant from an era in GitHub where that was like the preferred way to do things. Right now, we prefer some other way, and it's templates. I'm not sure why this repo it's not a template. By the way, a template is something like, let me see if I can find a template. This one is a template. And you can see that when it's a template, you can still fork, right? Fork is like the initial way that we tend to clone repos. Now we use templates, and you can see that you can create new repositories based on a template. And this will make a copy, and that copy, and you can create as many copies as you want, right? With forks, you can create only one. That's the sad part of forks. Oops, what I did. Cool. Let me know when you have the repo created.
I don't understand, you said we can only be the owner once of each
Fork.
project? Yeah, when we fork it, we can put ourselves as owner just once
Yes.
for every fork project? Or
No.
for
Just for
each?
this one.
Oh, okay.
This one doesn't have, like this, not this one, this one.
Why would we need to do it more than once?
When it's a template. When you start a new project, right? Not this one, because this is really particular. It's not a template because it's like it's like an exercise, right? In that case, you need to fork it only once because you will have a copy of that. Now there are repositories, there are templates. And a template is when you start a new project. Let's say you start a JavaScript and Bootstrap project, or an HTML and Bootstrap project, right? You can create 3, 4, we have like 2 or 3 of those, right? So instead of forking, you use the template. So the problem is this repo is not a template. You see, it doesn't have the template stuff on the top. That means that we cannot use it as a template. We can only fork, and sadly, fork is only once, right? You see, fork, I already forked it. And I can go to 4 gigs, and I can Probably add another fork here, yeah. But if I want to put it in my repo, in my account, it's only once. Not good, but it's not a big deal for this
You have to put
particular.
on the 4 gigs, right?
Yeah, put it in 4 gigs.
Yeah, I don't have the 4 gigs.
So fork, 4 gigs.
He doesn't have 4 gigs on it.
No? Who? Oh shit.
Doesn't allow me to go to 4 gigs.
You probably not linked to the.
Yeah, exactly. You should get an invite to 4 gigs and accept it. It's not just get the link, the invite. It's just you have to accept the invite.
Okay, to go back off of what you said about forking only once, do you mean in terms of the ownership? Because like if I put it under mine, then I can only fork it once. But
Yes.
then if I put it under 4 gigs, I can only fork it once.
No, you can forget as many times as you want with different names.
Oh, okay.
It works like this. Look, So this is 4 gigs, right? And this is your account. Really tiny right here. I'm just messing with you. Okay, so this repo, let's put it with the circle. This repo over here. This is what is the name of the exercise? The postcard, right? It's postcard. Now, it's not a template. It's not a template. That means that when we fork this, we can only fork once in your account. If you want to fork it in your account, you will have your own version of postcard right here. Oops. Your own version of postcard right here, but it could be only once. Only once. Now you can fork this one inside 4 gigs as many times as you want, but you need to change the name. That's why I put EFG-postcard. And you will have access to that, right? You can write on that repo. You cannot write on this. This is forbidden. This is only the account. Imagine if any student can write the main repo. It will be probably destroyed in a couple of programs, not in the same program, but you get the point.
For our resume purposes.
Yeah.
Employers need to see that.
Exactly. Now, not all, because you need the hours as well, not all projects require you to put it here. Like this postcard, I would not put it here in your GitHub. Because the thing is that it's not that big of a deal, right? not that great. Cool. We ready? No?
He accepted the invitation before, doesn't have it on there.
Doesn't let me go to 4 gigs.
Rene, can you check what happens with the invite? I think he got the invite, but not sure he doesn't have for Giz Academy organization. Okay, so you have the repo ready? You see how many repos in 4 gigs? 27,000. So you want to find your own? There you go. These are all mine. Yeah, I mean. The other thing is, I mean, I would not say that you have to pay for GitHub. It's only $4 a month, and it will give you like a lot of more hours.
I wanted to know because after this, if I had to.
Yeah, definitely do it. So yeah. And it will give you even faster. I think you can pay a little extra, a little bit more, not much. And code spaces, they have faster code spaces. Because right now we use one that has 2 cores and a little bit of memory.
Yeah, I see that.
But they have like 8 cores, 16 cores with a bunch of RAM, and it's really fast.
If you're a student, you get it for free.
That's the other thing.
Like with,
GitHub,
oh.
sign up there.
Yeah, yeah.
And there's a link that you're a student, they'll approve it.
Cool.
get
Once you
credentials.
clone it, once you fork it, code space. And remember, code space is a virtual machine. It's like taking, this is the explanation for code space. Now you have your repo here, right? This is my EFG exercise postcard. And this is GitHub, right? Now, CodeSpaces is technically GitHub still. It's a GitHub service. But the thing is that when you open your repo on CodeSpaces, CodeSpaces is over here. And what we do is we clone this repo into that code space. This is clone. That means that any change that we make inside code spaces is not automatically reflected in your GitHub repo, right? So once you finish writing all the code, you have to come here and say, okay, and we're going to call this commit and push, or commit and sync. Let's call it sync for now. There is an option in CodeSpace to commit and sync, okay? And we will learn how to do that as well. But that's what happens. Is that the thing is that I don't want you to lose your thing, your code, right? Because sometimes CodeSpace, because it's not a free version but a limited version, CodeSpaces will say, okay, you have too many already open, right? And you have to start deleting CodeSpaces, and then you delete the one that had your project, and you lost the code, right? There's no way to recover from that. So every time you finish writing the code, you have to commit the code back to GitHub, okay?
When I try to work, it says that there's not available destinations for this project. And I already have one on my own profile, but now I just want to see which profile to do it on, if I want to do it in 4 gigs. And then when I try to load code spaces on my own, it doesn't load.
Wait, you have, so what you're saying is that when you do fork,
Yeah.
and you select the owner,
No. It doesn't let me go to that view where it says create a new fork. As soon as I click fork, it says not available spaces for this project. And it doesn't let me, like it's full or something.
okay, go to your GitHub in your settings to your organizations, and let me see what you have there. You should have this, Give for Gigs Academy, listed there. Do you have it?
You are not a member of any organization.
Of any organization?
That's what it says.
Yeah, exactly. The same that happens. Yeah, you are not part of For Gigs Academy. Did you get the email to be part?
I do exercises and everything.
No, that doesn't matter.
It's not the same.
No, it's just that you need to have this. For Gigs Academy.